mean, this could conceivably be used in a menu, or you want some styles to, well here, I'll just do it like that. You have some styles you want to apply to some list items, but only list items inside the primary list items, right? So this would only apply to like sub-menu list items, for example. And then you want to ask, how specific is that selector? Versus how specific is a selector like this, for example. How about let's see, what would we here? We'll do I don't know why you would use a selector like that, but let's just talk about the specificities of these selectors. How does it work? It's 4 numbers, A, B, C, and D. This is the number of, so for example, I mean, that's what I mean by 4 numbers.
Bless you.
What's this one? Number of element selectors. This is an element selector, that's an element selector, and that's an element selector. This is class selectors. Also, here, let's do this. Also pseudo class counts. So this is a class selector, that's a pseudo class selector. How about B? ID selectors, there's one of those in each one. A doesn't come up very much. But what's A? That's inline styles with the style attribute, right? So what's the specificity of this puppy? Well, there's going to be 1 ID selector, 1 pseudo class selector, and then 2 element selectors. This doesn't count. This is a descendant, this is a child, remember? For contextual selectors, descendant and child, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold, but descendant and child don't factor in, which seems kind of strange, but it kind of makes sense if you think about it. In most cases, you don't have to put a leading 0 on it, but you can. I mean, so that would be the same thing as putting a leading 0. What would this one be?
0, 1, 1.
0, 1, 1, 1, right? Because there's 1 ID selector, 1 element selector, and 1 class. So anyway, that's not too hard once you practice it a few times. There was one subtle point in one of my examples. Suppose I do something like this. So I did ID equals main, and then I put a paragraph in there, class equals fancy, and I'm not going to put all the closing tags, and then in here I put span, and I want to put the word dog in there. And so I have this selector says something should be red, and then I have a span element selector that says something should be blue. You know, whatever, I don't care if it's the color or the background color, whatever. This has specificity 0, 0, 0, 1. So what color is the dog going to be? It's going to be blue because specificity doesn't trickle down. Now, if it is one of the style properties like text color that does trickle down into the sub-elements, and there was no style class that said what the span should look like, then the span would get the trickle down style property, like a font, family, or a color, or background color. But if this actually specifies the color, that's going to win, just because that's the most closely applied specificity. Now that said, if there were two different selectors that selected this span, like if there was another selector that selected the span, let's say there was a paragraph space span, and that one said it was green, would it be green? The key is, this doesn't select the span, right? These two things both select the span, because all you need is a span inside a paragraph or any span. So these two selectors both selected. And this one's more, this one's a 0002, whereas this one's a 0001. So it would be green in that case. So the specificity really matters when two or more selectors select the same thing. But it's not like a trickle-down situation, necessarily. So anyway, that was kind of the most subtle points in the examples from last time. And we've already talked about the collapsing margin stuff a couple times, so I'm not going to rehash that. Rick.
Are inline styles mutually exclusive from the style sheet styling?
I don't know what that means.
Oh wait, no, so if you have an inline style, then it's going to be 1000.
Yeah, if I put style and whatever property I'm trying to color, and I say it's going to be orange, then that's going to win out over both of those. That would be three things trying to give it the same color, and this one would win because that's 1000. So that's always wins. There's actually one way to override the specificity completely. You guys remember what that is? You put that exclamation important in there, and so if I came in here and said green and then important, that would color it green regardless of all the specificity calculations. So, yeah.
Is there a way for the 1000s place to be more than one? Since
That's a good question. I don't think so. I think if there's two style attributes in the same element, the second one would just overwrite the first one. I've never tried that. It would be bad HTML to put the same attribute twice in. So that's kind of a moot point, but I don't think there can be ever anything bigger than one there. If so, then that's new to me. So no, just a little refresher of what we talked about last time. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about today. First of all, I have the notice for our exam. It's 2 weeks from today. I always try to give you 2-week notice. There's not much in the more details, but what it's going to tell you is it's in 7 through 11. The only stuff we've covered since the previous exam, and it's a little more detail intensive, but now that you're getting used to style sheets, you can handle that. So anyway, we're going to start talking about responsive basics today. And there is some homework due Tuesday, but we're going to work on that in class a little. So keep that in mind. Get a good start on it, and if you're stuck on something, there's some subtleties to that homework. It's a little more difficult than some of them. It's not long, but some of the responsive stuff is, if you've not seen it before, it's a little funky. So I'll try to help you through some of that in class. Now I have some concepts to talk about first. First of all, why are phones funky, or tablets, when it comes to design? Well, you've got these things called hardware pixels, and hardware pixels are physical pixels. Like I don't know if you know how a monitor like this is constructed, but there's these little dots, and I don't know, this monitor probably has, I don't know, 12 or 1400 dots, and each dot can only be one specific color. That's a pixel. You guys know what a pixel is. But a physical pixel is built into the monitor, and there's no smaller thing than that. But phones have this extra concept called a CSS pixel. And you can take a 1200 pixel wide web page, like we've built 1200 pixel fixed width web pages, right? How is it possible to put that on a phone if the phone only has 600 device pixels? Let's actually look at some of the device pixels. Well, actually, we'll wait because there's more. So how does that work? How can I put a 1200 pixel wide web page on a phone that only has physically 600 pixels? Well, there's these things called CSS pixels, which is one level of abstraction above the device pixel. And that's why on a phone, you have to pinch in and out. Because what it's doing is it's adjusting the CSS pixels, which is kind of a fabricated thing. Even though there's only 600 device pixels, it fudges it. And you guys understand the zoom in versus, so I call that pinching. You guys know how that works. So that's how you can do things on a phone. Let's see what else other terminology is here. Okay, so the device viewport, excuse me. On a traditional screen, device pixels and CSS pixels are the same thing. So I can't pinch that screen, right? I can't pinch that screen. So the device pixels and the CSS pixels are the same thing, right? But on a mobile device, you've got standard viewport sizes, which talks about the standard CSS pixel width. So every device has its device pixels and it has its CSS pixels. So let's look at this. This is a little old, but it'll give us the idea. So check this out. Here's some Apple products. And what this means is, I mean, this is pretty old. What do they have, iPhone 13s now or something? 15. I thought I had a new one, and I think mine's like a 13. But, so this is talking about the actual device pixels, but this is talking about the CSS pixels. And there's a default rendering display that's different. So if you load a fixed width website on a phone, it picks the default rendering size based on what its default is. So anyway, I don't want to get into that too much, but that kind of shows you the difference between the device pixels and these fake CSS pixels. And when you're using a style sheet, you're telling the phone to use those fake CSS pixels where it's kind of ignoring its device settings. That's the pinch in and out thing again. So I don't want to say too much about that. I think you get all that. And what's a responsive web page? Well, rather than look through this paragraph here, let's go to the W3 schools. Responsive quick overview. So, well here, let's look at the W3 schools page itself. Watch what happens when I make it smaller. Well, I actually went through a breakpoint already, watch. I'm making it smaller. I just hit one breakpoint. And what happened on that breakpoint? The left nav bar went away. So where's the left nav bar? Is it gone forever? Where's the left nav bar? It's in. This is called a hamburger menu. You guys are familiar with hamburger menus. Looks like a hamburger kind of. And let's see. I don't know if there's any more breakpoints. There's going to be a few more breakpoints here. Keep going. Nothing happened. Well, the search bar went away. Look at that. Hit one breakpoint. The search bar goes away. becomes this icon. Let's see what else happens. Now the search bar's back, and the rest of the menu items turned into a menu. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. But one thing to note that on a phone, a responsive web page is not going to have any more columns. The columns are going to start stacking up on top of each other. Like if we find a news website, let's try to find the New York Times. Dude got 25 years. Did you guys read that? Anyway.
Also,
What?
he had a pretty weird, pretty whack living situation.
Yeah, I don't want to get into all that. I mean, to each his own. We all have our oddities, but anyway. I didn't come here to talk about Sam Bankman-Fried, but anyway. So watch what happens. So there's various there's columns, but watch what happens when I get on a phone. And you guys know how this works. Boom, all of a sudden the 2-column structure went away, and the columns are all stacked on top of each other. So how do they make that happen? Notice some other things that are happening. Like, see this image? Baseball starts today. Cubs are playing Texas tonight. But watch this image with these that's Aaron Judge, and I don't know who those other people are. What is the image doing as I'm making the screen smaller? It's getting smaller. So, and then look, I hit another breakpoint here, and things jumped around again. But anyway, so what are breakpoints? How are the images adapting and all that stuff? So, what the first W3 Schools page does, it just goes through some of the basics. First off, I think we use this magic viewport meta. This didn't exist 10 years ago, but all of a sudden it existed, and I call it the magic viewport meta. And what it does is it just magically makes certain things render better on a phone. Like, without the viewport meta, a simple page might look like that. You put that viewport meta in, and it makes things stack up. So the browser vendors themselves did some stuff to help out. So what would you say about this meta element? What's it doing? Take a look at it and tell me what it's doing. What do you think? I mean, look at the attributes. Tell me what it's doing. Conjecture. All right.
Was meta actually a thing at the top of the?
Yeah, meta. It's like those other meta elements where you put your keywords and your description and the author. But this meta is not your information. This meta is telling the device something. So the metas you put in tells the search engine something about your page. This tells the device how to render your page. And I'm not asking exactly how it does what it does, but generally what's it doing? This is telling to adjust the content to the natural pixel width of the device, and this is telling it no zoom if possible. Now, if your page exceeds the normal device width, you're going to get zoomed, otherwise it can't display it. But if it can, it'll display it within the normal device width. So that's, for example, why it does something like this. It squashes it down to the device width. So anyway, that's that. Responsive images. Why would you set the width properly to 100%? That seems to go against everything we've learned. What the heck does that mean? Yeah?
It allows to, like, as you zoom in or shorten the page, it'll follow along with it.
Yeah, but the key is 100%. You're right. but there's a little more to it. 100% of what is the key, and that's its container.
Yeah.
So if you have a container and you use responsive framework, you set the image to be, so if this is your image, you set it to be 100% of the width. But as we've seen, as we've resized some of these pages, the containers adjust and they jump around when we hit these breakpoints. So what happens is it will roll with the width of the container. So the container often changes on different devices. Which implies the image will change. Image rolls with the changes, I'll say. So that's that. They're also using a case here where you can use the max width property. So what happens with the max width is if it gets in a situation where it can shrink, it will, but it won't keep growing without bound. So max width can work kind of the similar way. Let's see what else we have. Oh, check this out. This is something they added to HTML recently. You can do this with style sheets as well, but they added a new picture element, which is different from the standard IMG tag. And look what you're doing. You're telling it to use a different image depending upon how big the screen is. So this is kind of a form of a media query. This is a CSS thing. And think about what happens here. This code is in your page and it travels to someone else's device. So the CSS regarding this asks that device, how many pixels wide are you displaying? And then it'll put the image in according to the device. So it'll literally swap different images in and out on different devices. But the way to simulate being on different devices is, there's a couple ways to do it. One, the clumsy way, is to drag your browser. This is the easy way to do it, right? If you just drag your browser window, see it put in the different image when I got to a small screen. So if I make it bigger, all of a sudden puts in a different image. So dragging the browser window is one way to do it. Does anybody know another way to simulate how your page would look on different devices?
Inspector, page, or inspector, page, one of the two.
What were you going to say, Rick?
Control plus and control minus.
I don't know the shortcut
Actually, no.
key because they're different on Windows or Mac.
Or zoom in and zoom out.
That's not a great way to. That's not the zoom. You can zoom in and zoom out, and that's one way to do it, but that's not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to go to View, Developer, and again, I don't know the shortcut keys, but View Developer.
View source.
No, we don't want to see the source code. We want Developer Tools. And let's see how to get the, see this thing right here where it shows a phone and a computer? Right here on the left in Developer Tools, it shows a phone and a computer. I click on that and check this out.
Dimension.
Yeah, it's telling you how wide it is.
Actually,
So this is pretty cool, so check it out. So here we're simulating a really wide monitor. And let's see if we can tell where the breakpoints happen. I bet one breakpoint's going to happen about 12,000. Let's see when that left menu disappears. No, it wasn't 12,000 or 1,200. I bet it's 986. Yeah, hang on. 80. No. 996. How did I know that?
Magic.
I've just seen that number before. There's standard breakpoints that different style sheet frameworks use. So that's a pretty common one. That's like, what that is that's how it tells the difference between a big screen and a tablet computer. Traditionally, there were two breakpoints. You had your phones, you had your tablets, and you had your desktop monitors, right? So 3 devices, 2 breakpoints. Some of them have more breakpoints. All of a sudden, they added 3. You had your phone, you had a phablet, a tablet, and then a desktop. What's a phablet?
Mini tablet.
Yeah, it's a phone so big it's like a tablet or it's a mini tablet. Like some of the people have these phones in their pockets that are like monsters now, these oversized. I don't know if that's considered a phablet or not, but the breakpoints are basically logical to separate different device types, and that's kind of how I knew where that breakpoint would be. So how did I find that again? I don't want to tell you the shortcut keys, but I went in Chrome at least. This is in Chrome. View, Developer, Developer Tools. Hang on, View, Developer, Developer Tools. And if you don't get it, you have to. There's this little thing over here on the left that looks. It shows a phone and a monitor, and then that gives it to you. You know what else is cool in the developer tools? Check this out. If I go in here to, if you're ever trying to figure out what blocks are doing in your page, here let me pull the developer tools up on my page while we're in there. So what's the structure of my page? So if you come down here to open up the body. So look, when I'm in the elements view now. When I put my mouse over the body tag, it highlights the whole body. Now I put my mouse over this div that's called top stripe, and it shows you what the top stripe is. And then if I open the top stripe, I have a content wrapper, which is basically almost all of the top stripe. And then if I open the content wrapper, I've got this UL, which is the top nav. And then, anyway, so if you're trying to figure out which parts of your page are which, this is pretty handy. You can actually bore down into your source code. So this is the div ID large logo column. It highlights the whole logo column. And then anyway, so you can highlight your columns separately. Isn't that pretty cool? So anyway, the developer tools are pretty handy. So here, so here we're to the last example they have, and I want you to look at this one for a second. This right here, they just added this to style sheets. I don't know when it was, 10 years ago, 12. It's called it. Where have we seen this @ symbol before? There was an @ rule for like importing fonts. Yeah, it wasn't a style properly. It was a rule that does something for you different than applying a style property. That's what an @ rule does. It does something. Well, what a media query does is it tells your style sheet to look at the device it landed on and to see how big it is. So this media query says if it's a screen and it has a max width of 800, what's it doing? Tell me what these classes are probably doing. I mean, it's a simpler way than we handled it, but what are they doing? We've got .left, .right, and .main. They're all floated left. So like they're column classes, right? If we were doing this, we might have called this column 20. We might have called this column 60. Remember we went through all that? They're just using simpler names. I don't know why they need a left and a right, because they do the same thing. But, so these are standard column 20 and column 60 classes. What's the purpose of the media query? And what's it doing? it's saying on any screen less than or equal to 800 pixels, it's redefining all three of those style classes to not be columns anymore, to do what blocks do naturally. So literally, inside the media query, if your screen is less than 800, the style sheet will detect that and it'll use these style classes and these ones like it doesn't even exist. But if I take this same style sheet and put it on a big monitor, it ignores that like they don't exist and uses those style classes. So there's literally different style classes that are used on different devices. And of course on the small screen, these things would stack on top of each other rather than being side-by-side columns. So media queries. All right. So check this out. Here's another one that we just went. Here's a new unit. I always call it the Volkswagen unit, the VW. So it says font size 10 Volkswagens,
I love it.
right? So how big will that font be? 10 Volkswagens. Well, maybe VW's not Volkswagen.
Oh, great.
What do you suppose it is? Viewport width. So one VW is 1% of the viewport, which is different depending upon what device it lands on, right? So watch this font. The font is going to adjust with my viewport. Check it out. The font is getting smaller and smaller. So they even have font units that will adapt to different devices. So that's pretty cool. All right. So I have these examples here. And I've got a responsive page and a non-responsive page. And if you look at my website, it says that I have put these at an easy to find location because those examples are better viewed on a phone. Now I know a lot of you have phones because you spend a lot of time on them in class. Which whatever, I'm not going to whine about that. So maybe we can use our phones constructively in class and surf to www.cknuckles.com/viewport and look at some of those examples. No, what am I saying? None of you guys would ever use your phones in class.
Yeah.
That's slander.
I know, right?
I'm having ES.
It's so cute, it's so tiny.
I can't type on a phone. I should get one of you guys to type. You guys can use both
There's
thumbs.
dictation, maybe.
I'm a one thumb or a one finger phone typer. I've seen what you guys do. You've got these freakish skills that, like, I don't know how. You got to grow up doing that. Excuse me. It's not coming up for me.
Where it shows the index. Yeah.
It should be. I must have typed something in wrong. cknuckles.com viewport. Yeah, you should get a directory listing of all those examples.
Why?
Why am I not getting it? I must have typed some. No?
What'd you do?
Well, you know what I did? I Google searched it instead of putting it in my address field. So here, hang on.
I'm doing.
Give me a second. I'm so clumsy. This isn't even funny. I'll get there in a second. Until I get there, I'm not gonna explain what the examples do. I had select all, but it went away. There we go. Come on. There we go. I made it. So, the terms and concepts one we don't really need to look at, because that was just talking about device pixels versus the fake pixels, which allow you to pinch in and out. But if you look at the responsive page, it has the viewport meta, and it talks a little bit about how many pixels wide the default viewport is for certain phones, and what it says at the bottom is if you open the developer tools and get the page to render to look the exact same way, you can tell exactly how many CSS pixels your phone defaults to. So here's what I'm talking about there. So I'm going to go to view, developer, developer tools. Let me get my thing. So I'm going to find that page and I'm going to make it look exactly like on my phone. My thing went away. View, developer tools. So like when I'm at the bottom, Chrome on. So that's what it looks like on my phone. It wraps around right after Chrome on. So this iPhone 13, it looks like what's showing around 393 CSS pixels by default. And that's not a very wide viewport. 300 and some pixels to work with. That's why phones have to zoom in and out so much. That's not very many pixels, but if you guys do that and you get it to wrap around at about the same spot, you can see what your CSS pixels default is. Has anybody else done that? I know you're all not as smooth as a phone as me, so it's probably taking you a little longer.
Yep.
But anybody? You see what I'm saying? You don't have to do this. Is anybody going to do this, or should we just move on? I think we should.
Just move on. Just move on.
Come on, man.
No, good.
He's going to do it. We did this in class last year, and it was fun. Seriously. I can attest to that. I was there. People liked it. People said, yeah, this is fun.
How do you see?
Well, so what you got to do, you got to look on your phone to see about where it wraps around. So mine is wrapping around right after Chrome on and open and then developer. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if you have a wider phone, if you have a bigger phone, it might be wrapping in a different place. So I adjusted this to make it wrap just like my phone did, and then I could tell how many device pixels or how many CSS pixels my phone was defaulting to. How many you got?
I'm not sure. Mine's wrapping. Mine says Chrome and then A on A. Where's wrapping?
So your A is still on one line?
Yeah.
So did you move this in your browser so it's wrapping it about the same place?
Mine's the same.
Huh?
Mine's the same as yours.
It's about the same?
Yeah.
What, is that an iPhone?
Yeah.
Like 13?
Yeah, I think it's. Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody else have does somebody have a huge phone? Does anybody have one of those phones that couldn't even fit in my pocket? I see people walking around with those. People even have smartphones that fold now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, that's
It's circled
wild.
back around.
Personally, I thought the Motorola Razr was the best phone ever invented, but that was just me.
Flip phone.
I love the commercial where they took a Motorola Razr and whipped it and stuck in the wall.
This one.
Remember that?
Do this one.
You guys don't remember that?
I want the one that slip up.
Has anybody else done this?
What?
this experiment.
Yes, I did. It's the same as yours.
It's the same as mine?
Yeah.
Anybody got something different? So everybody's phone that tried this, it's showing about that many, 393 or give or take.
Yeah, it's like 380.
Yeah, whatever, 380. Let's see how much tolerance there is. Mine wraps at Chrome on. The less I can get it is 392. I can now,
Mine
but
is like on A.
yeah, mine doesn't show the A on my phone though. Anyway, whatever. It's an interesting experiment, I think. Let's see what the next example is. Here, I'm going to get rid of this. I don't think we need the. Here's a non-responsive page. It looks good up there. See what the non-responsive page looks like on your phone. So what do you make? What's the non-responsive page doing?
It's like the top half.
Well, what it does is it zooms way out and shrinks it so that you can see the whole thing. So whereas the last page, it kind of adapted to the phone, the non-responsive page is zooming way out so that you can see the whole thing. It does not use the fancy viewport meta tag. Now let's see. Now look at number 4. That has the fixed width content issue. Let's see if I can remember what this is. Okay, so what the deal is with this page is the page layout's 100% wide, but the middle thing is, hang on, is that, that's still 3, hang on, I got the wrong one. So the one I have on my phone now is the 4th one. So it's got, now you can see it's got a full width stripes, and it's got 1100 fixed width content area. What does that do on your phone? What happens when you zoom out on your phone? Well, for me, it looks like this. When I zoom on my phone a little bit, those 100% width stripes look like that. The 1100 pixel wide body looks like that, and then the 100% width stripe looks like that. Is that what it looks like on your phone? What's happening is these were set to be 100%. This one was set to be 1100 pixels. And the phone is zooming out enough initially so that you can see this whole thing, but that makes these things not cover the whole. It's really weird. You get unpredictable behavior.
Mine doesn't, for the middle one, it doesn't zoom out for the, it just like cuts it off.
It just cuts it off.
Yeah.
Well, if you zoom out, then you can see that. Zoom out a little bit, then you can probably see what I'm talking about.
Like I can like scroll, but like not like zoom
You
out.
can't pinch it?
Yeah. It just like,
When I pinch mine, it looks like this, where this is the edge of my phone, and that's the edge of my phone. You guys can't get number 4 to look like that?
You have to zoom in to zoom out.
yeah.
You have to zoom in to zoom out?
Because if you zoom out, it'll do a tab.
Oh. So anyway, my point is even something like 100%, if you're mixing that with fixed width content, it doesn't work out right. I think I have another one. Let's see what my example number 5 does. What does 5 do? I forget what 5 does. Oh, that's even worse. What they try to do here. Same as the previous example, but I put the magic meta in there, trying to make it responsive, and now it's even worse. Now, and so instead of looking like that, it now looks like kind of like this, and the middle one goes way off like that. So you can't take a page with fixed width content, and you can't put that magic viewport meta in there and try to make it responsive. So let's see, I have one more example and I forget. So let's see what the sixth one does. Oh, I remember what I did right here.
It's on the screen.
So that's a lot of examples just to say something really simple. If you do want to use a fixed width page, use the same viewport meta and just tell it how wide the content width is. And then that way it'll kind of render naturally on the phone. So even though it has 100% wide head stripes and then fixed width content, if you tell it how wide to render it, it lines everything up properly. So that's a lot of examples to go through just to say something kind of interesting, but now it all lines up properly on a phone. So what was the moral of that whole story?
Viewports are cool.
Viewports are cool. Playing with viewports are cool. Viewports in and of themselves are mundane objects. Playing with viewports is cool. But my point is if you have fixed width content, it's going to be funky on a phone. If you try to put the magic viewport meta in there, that even makes it worse. But if you actually tell the phone how wide your fixed width content is, then it makes everything work, but you still have to pinch in and out to see it. So anyways, interesting phone example, some stuff I was playing with some years ago just to see how things worked. But we're obviously not going to be dealing with fixed width content anymore. So let's go through W3 School's more advanced design now, and we have to talk about some things here. Hang on, I'm going to get rid of these tools. So I'm going to go now. So if you go to W3 School's responsive quick overview, I'm going to go to the next link now, which is the responsive web design tutorial. And so they're talking about stuff that just looks different on different devices. And I want to talk about, so viewport, we've already talked about the viewport meta, blah, blah, blah. Now this grid view, what is a grid view? Have you ever seen anything like that before? Can you see the vertical grid lines on that? They've got this web page mock-up divided into 12 vertical regions. And this is a very common technique. It's called grid design. Almost all the responsive CSS frameworks use a 12-column grid design. And what we're talking about here is, this is called a column 3 because it's 3 of the grid widths. This is a column 3. These things would be column 12s. And the white area in the middle would be column 6. So they're all based on grids. And what's interesting about this grid design business is if you look at some older websites, the original grid system thing has some interesting demos on it. This 960 grid system was before responsive design, but they kind of pioneered the grid system for developing column layouts. And the 960 grid system was it's called 960 because monitors at the time were about 1,000 pixels wide. So people were designing 960 pixel wide web pages. So this is out of date, but they have a good overview of some of their 12 column grid system things. So check this out. So here's an old screen copy of the Drupal website. Have you heard of Drupal? I think it's one of the content management systems, but it says show grid. And watch how, when I show the grid, watch how all their columns line up with the grid system. That's a column 4, and a column 4. So we would have called them column 33s, but in the grid system, they're 4 grid units wide. This would be this would be a 1, 2, 3. That's a column 5 and a column 7. this, so these column structures, this, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this would be a column 6 and a column 6. We would have called them 50-50 columns. Here, let's find another one. Some of them used to use a 16 column grid. That's not common. Most people use a 12 column grid now. Here's another one. We'll show the grid. And they either have generally column 12s or column 4, column 4, column 4. So just keep this in mind. This 12 column grid system is a very standard thing. All right. Okay. So, here's the next thing we're going to look at. If you guys still have some, look at one more thing and then we'll be out of here. So, here's the homework requirements for Tuesday. Like I said, we're going to spend some time working on that in class. But what I did is I went through the W3 Schools responsive design tutorial, and I constructed this style sheet called responsive columns, which implements responsive columns similar to how W3 Schools did it. And then I have a responsive web page that uses that style sheet. Your homework is going to be an adaptation of this. So like usual, or often, I give you some examples, and then for the homework, you take those ingredients and make a slightly different stew. Or you can grab a zip archive containing both of these. So I'm going to do that and play with it a little bit, and then you'll start to see what responsive design is all about, now that we talked about some of the key concepts. So here, let me grab the zip archive. Man, I gotta find it real quick and get it
Wait,
open.
wait.
Say what, Rick?
What about unzipping it first?
What about what?
You just downloaded it, you gotta unzip it, right?
Yeah, I gotta find it. Responsive example.zip. Responsive example. There's a style sheet and HTML page. Let's load those in the code editor. Well, hang on. Here's the style sheet. What's going on here? There's 3 media queries. So that defines several breakpoints. Anything under 600 pixels, everything's going to be 100 pixels wide. These columns, called column medium, these column classes only exist on things that are 600 pixels wide or bigger. And these columns here only exist on super wide screens. So I want you to watch what happens in the HTML code. So this is pretty standard for how you do responsive design. I want you to look at this code and tell me what you think happens. I'm using 2 style classes, but remember these medium column classes only exist on a medium-sized device. So what's going to happen here? Look at this row. So in responsive design, one row of stuff is often called a panel. So this is a panel with a 2-column structure inside it. But if I put this on a large device where these column 6 classes exist, That's gonna be two 50-50 columns. Why column 6? Why does column 6 create two 50-50 columns? What does column 6 have to do with 50%? Middle point of what? The 12-column grid system. So it's all based on a 12-column grid system. W3.css, Bootstrap, that's almost universal now as a 12-column grid system. However, if I go to a medium-sized device, these column 6 classes don't exist because of the media query, but these do. So column 12 means all the way across. So we're telling it to be on a big screen to have 50-50 columns, but no columns on a medium device. So watch how this works. Let's load this in the browser. So watch my top columns. We're getting there. Go, go, go. Boom. I hit that break point, and the column 6s go away and they become column 12s. 2 column 6s, 2 column 12s. And the red ones are working just like that as well. How about this next one? That was the same. How about the bottom one?